presentation from Wyndham North PE, North Leal LLC. Thank you. Have a safe drive back.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Regarding the city's maintenance of water quality. I know you got a presentation on the.
While this is warming up, and I'm just going to talk a little bit about why we're here. So this is two parts of the presentation. One part is our findings in water supply alternatives, which I'll go through first, and then I'll end the presentation with talking about your water quality issues within the city that we've looked at over the last couple of weeks. But let's talk about water supply planning. Well, one of the reasons why you hired us, or to get to the point where you are now, is you first start with a drought. I think that kind of gets people thinking. And so you take all your water from Lake Corpus Christi. A year ago, Corpus Christi was at 40%. A year later, it's at 30%. And so there's, if the drought continues, it's probably not if, at some point in time, the drought can and probably will get worse, just history repeats itself. And so looking at an alternative supply is always a good idea. The second thing that brought you to this point is you needed to make a decision on spending up to $18 million replacing a pipeline that goes to that same source of water that may or may not be there. Then the third thing that brings you to this table is, well, you pay a certain amount for that water, a pretty nice price for raw water, because it takes money for Corpus to develop that supply. And then you lose 50% of it, so that water becomes double in cost. So it behooved you to kind of take a look at your entire water supply. And so I pretty much have most of this memorized anyway, so, but it's better to have a visual. So we looked at every aspect that you can look at in developing your water supply. From say, do nothing is always an option. In this particular case, if you do nothing, it's probably not a good idea because something is going to break. Looking at groundwater from two different sources, we looked at upgrading your existing system with pipelines and pump station improvements and things to bring it up, because it's a 50-year pipeline, one of them's 30, one of them's 50. And so you have continuous repairs on the older line. And so we went through the process and said, okay, we're looking at what is it actually costing you if you do nothing, what's it costing you if you add improvements to an alternative supply, and that includes brackish and fresh groundwater. It includes reusing wastewater, and it includes connecting on to South Texas Water Authority and buying water from them and building a pipeline to them. So let me see. Nope.
We need the lights off, Council, or are you okay with that? Okay.
I'll try to be, there's a lot to cover, so I'm going to be sure and stop me if I go too far. So I'm going to kind of hit the high points.
Absolutely.
And kind of get to the point here. So we've already kind of discussed, reach up here. So we looked at existing supply and your aged delivery system, pipeline and pump station, and then water losses, which we talked about. And so diversification options, groundwater, brackish, desalination, the South Texas Water Authority, and then direct potable reuse. That's actually taking your wastewater, that's pretty much your last resort. So what I'm going to touch on today is really comparing brackish groundwater, which ends up being the most cost effective, and comparing that to your existing. Now, comparing it to what you're doing now only shows what we're going to show you. It's cheaper for you to build something than to do nothing, which is kind of an unusual circumstance. But that's not really a feasible alternative, doing nothing, because you've got to spend some money upgrading your system. But it just indicates that doing nothing is still more expensive than getting an alternative supply. So if we look at the groundwater supply, there's two locations. One is the Jasper and the Evangeline. And so we're looking at the Jasper, which is a deeper zone.
And those are aquifers, right?
Those are aquifers. And so the Evangeline, which is sometimes known as the Goliad Sands, you might hear people, but everybody that takes groundwater in the whole area takes it from the Evangeline. Here in Alice, it's marginal quality, and we can't get enough water out of that aquifer. And then if we do, we're going to build 10 to 15 wells, and it's going to cost a lot more money to develop that. And then you're going to take up the supply of the ranchers and farmers. All the people, it's going to affect everybody's supply because it's over tapped and it's a shallow aquifer. So we're looking at the Jasper, which we can do the same thing with 2 wells. It's brackish, so it will require treatment. The Evangeline, even in this area, will require some treatment because we estimate that's going to be still slightly brackish to fresh. So it just made more sense. And so Jasper alternative is an alternative supply. It does require treatment, but you do have to get a permit to discharge the concentrate. That's the byproduct from the treatment process. And so what we do is go through TCQ. They give us a draft permit based on what they feel we can put into a tributary. And in most cases, we've improved the water quality from that concentrate. And it's a drought-proof source. So now, what we recommend is don't eliminate your other supply. Now you've got 2 supplies. A lot of cities would like to have 2 supplies, especially in times of drought. So here's kind of a cross-section. We'd be taken from the lower aquifer to the Jasper about 2,000 feet deep, and we're probably looking at about 2,000 parts per million, which 1,000 is drinking water. So it's not really too bad a water quality. A lot of people, some of the concerns that I've heard, just as we develop these projects or even in this area, well, Corpus is developing desalination and it's expensive. Well, they're talking about seawater. We're talking brackish, and we're talking totally, 3 to 4 times the cost and the discharge and everything else. It's not even, it's like you're not even doing the same thing, but we're desalinating a brackish water and not seawater.
Roughly, seawater is what, how many parts per million?
35,000.
Okay.
And we're treating 2,000.
Okay, big difference.
So it's, the higher the pressure, the higher the cost. So brackish desalination, we're looking at 3 million gallon a day. Your average flow right now is 3.6. So if we operate this pretty much 24/7, that's your base load of your treatment plant. So we mix it with about 0.6 million gallon of surface water. So now you've got your underloading your surface water plant, but you're using your surface water plant to take care of the 4th of July, the days that you go up to 6 million gallons a day, but that's not a sustained amount. So you use that as your peak system. So that's what that says. So, and we also have, this includes bypassing Lake Finley, because Lake Finley, you're losing probably 75% of your water through seepage and evaporation and that. So it'll be probably maintained at a much lower level, so you don't lose that kind of water. And it possibly might not be needed if we can lower the lake and not spend the bypass money. So there's still a couple things that we need to look at. So one thing is alternative source of water, and by locating it at your existing water treatment plant, you don't have to add we don't estimate adding any additional personnel. You're utilizing your existing pumping and distribution system, and you don't have property costs. So this is the most ideal situation in co-locating next to your existing surface water plant. And it minimizes your impact on rate increases that will occur, not may occur, but they will occur over the next 20 years from Corpus Christi. I mean, their prices go up, so they pass it along to you.
And just so we will understand, when we talk about Corpus Christi, it's the contract that we have with Corpus Christi.
Yes. You buy water from Lake Corpus Christi, and actually from the city of Corpus Christi from that point.
And not only the city of Alice, but I think 20 other cities also around.
Yes,
that
there's
contract?
several. Yeah, I don't know the number.
21 communities.
Yeah, but there's a lot of people, and so one of their long-range plan is to go seawater desalination. So if they can postpone seawater desalination, which is more expensive, and if Alice takes less, then that may postpone their major investment in seawater. So it also reduces your losses, and it's scalable. So in 10 years, you come to the point where you've got to rehab your pump station on Lake Corpus Christi for $5 or $10 million. You say, well, I can expand the plant for $3 million. Then you have that option. You have more options in the future for your future water supply.
Mr. Norris, what size of motors do we have in the pump station, and what size of motors would be running this plant?
Well, a lot of people say that seawater or desalination is power intensive, but you spend probably more power, or you do spend more power costs pumping from Lake Corpus Christi to Lake Finley to the plant. And so we spend more on the desalination project pumping it out of the ground than we do in the desalination process, because it's low salinity, so the pressure is about 150 that we pump through for the pressure. But you've got 500 horsepower. I think they're 500 at the Lake Corpus Christi, and here you're probably looking at 150. Pumping through the plant. So, the power costs are not really your biggest area of operation for this. So, kind of looking at graphically, this is the average of 3 million gallons a day is all the light blue. That would be your brackish groundwater desalination. So that's kind of the volume on an annual basis that you'd be pumping out of the Jasper. And the surface water would be taking care of these peaks that occur mainly in your spring, summer, or early fall. You exceed 3 million gallons a day, so that's where you take care of it from the surface water plant. And this is just kind of showing kind of a 20-year average cost by the time you put debt service and all the projects. And I'm not going to go too much in details, but I highlighted a couple. The first one is Brackish, which is a 3.0 with 0.6 of the surface. Your 20-year cost is $98 million. That sounds like a lot, and it is. But that would be for a 20-year average, including a growth and increase in chemical costs, and all of them have the same factor. So if it's lower, if one's lower, the other's going to be lower. So this gives you a magnitude. So if you stuck with what you've got, if you look down the other shaded one is all surface with improvements and with no alternative, your average cost is $4.63 compared to $3.69. If you do nothing, it says no improvements is the one in the middle. It's pretty close to what you're doing, making the improvements, but that's not. It's only for illustration purposes, because you've got to do something. You've got to spend at least $5 million up front on repairing one of the pipelines. You can't do the bypass, and you'll still continue to have losses. And if the price of water goes up, then...
And the difficulty, sir, is that if the city was to spend all this money on the reslipping of the lines, redoing our pump station, because the pump station's old, redoing our water plant, those could run into $20, $30, $40 million versus, and then the bad part about that is if you've done that and then the lake went dry, now you spend all that money not getting water at all.
Well, yeah, and that's true. And even if the lake didn't go dry, you're still losing 50% of your water, which is even more than your capital cost of improving the plant. So this kind of gives you an alternative that, and when we get to the bottom line, it surprised me as well. So,
Mr. Norris, you mentioned the cost of chemicals. Does the desal plant use chemicals also?
yes, it does. But you spend more money on chemicals on your surface water plant than you will on the brackish plant. So let's just talk about financing, and I'm going to go through this pretty quickly, but it gives you an order of magnitude of where we are. Right now, you pay, let's roughly say $2 million for water every year. That's your water cost that you pay City of Corpus Christi. And that's at 85 cents. And you can't see over there, but South Texas was raised last year to $1.07 for their raw water. I'm not saying that Corpus is going to do the same thing here, but I'm not going to plant that seed. So let's just kind of stick to the 85 cents. But knowing that at some point in time, the price will increase. So if we do the 3 million gallon a day brackish desal plant and we're only buying 600,000 gallons of water, your raw water cost goes down to 249,000 from 2 million. So what that does is that leaves you available to finance or do whatever you want to do. Go spend it, go give it away or whatever. You've got almost $1.9 million available that you're not going to be spending. So now what do you do with the financing? So the debt service for the 3 MGD 2 wells and the system, and I'm using high numbers too. I think I used 20 years at 4% interest, and you can do better than that, but
Yeah, bond council was at 2.5, something like
Yeah,
that.
if it'll work at 4%, it'll work at 2.5.
Oh, absolutely.
So that's the debt service, about 1.2 million. Bypassing for the lake is about $1 million project. You're talking about 134,000. And so that still leaves you almost a $500,000 of surplus. All right, so now you've got to operate a new plant. So your current operations, not counting the cost of water, is 1.6 million. That's what you're paying right now, not counting buying water. The cost of operations for now is going to be reduced because you're reducing your chemicals and things. You're not reducing personnel, but you're reducing chemicals and power. Those all relate to the amount that you use. So that reduces to 673. We add to that the new cost of operating the Brackish facility of 1.2. So now you're at 1.9. The total new cost between the two facilities of 1.9 million. So you've got an increase of 340,000 in cost of operations, but if you look at the two in red, you add the surplus and the increase, you still come out with a net gain of 153,000. And that's with no rate increase. With the rate increase, we expect, if that rate increase happened, you're spending another $500,000 on water that you're not spending right now. So what that tells us is if you do revenue bonds, then you don't have to raise rates and you don't have to raise taxes. So kind of the bottom line is every day that you turn on the tap, you're spending more money than doing nothing than doing something. And I was surprised at what that would come out. And that's a concern because I think your debt service is going to be less than that. And so it gives you a little bit more cushion than probably what I show here. So I'm not a financial advisor, but I just use the simple math related to doing this. And so this is not necessarily a recommendation to do whatever types of bonds, but I just use revenue bonds as an example that doesn't affect anything. Now, what this also does, one of the things that I didn't say at the beginning, why you're here today, is this is bottled quality water. And I know that you've had some issues within the city as reservoirs turn over. It's very difficult to treat that water. Reverse osmosis takes care, it removes everything. And if something gets by, then nothing can get by. You may clog the filters.
This solves that problem that happens every year.
Exactly.
Supposedly every year.
Except-
Everything's that problem.
Mhm. Well, when you look at your bottled water, it says treated with reverse osmosis and minerals added for taste. Well, what we do is we don't treat the entire. If it's 3 million gallons, we're 3 million out of the plant. We may be treating 2.5, bypass a little bit of the well water, blend it together to make a bottle quality water. And so your softer water, you don't have problems with water heaters, and so wherever we've done this before, and they switch over from surface and back to surface, they get complaints when they say on the reverse osmosis of the Brackish treated water, then everybody's happy. So if you keep a blend and you're using a lot less surface water, the less surface water you use, the cheaper it is. So, and that's kind of the end of that portion. So if we want to ask any questions related to that particular recommendation, we could discuss that.
Council, just for informational purposes, I know we had a joint meeting with the Ellis Water Authority. I know Mr. Hossa was on that committee as well, am I correct? And this same presentation was done at the Ellis Water Authority. They actually...
A little longer, it's like 4 hours.
Yeah, that one, we were there like 3 or 4 hours after. Well, Councilman Hossa and I were in that meeting. So just so that the public's understanding what it is and what we're working on. So it's almost like a joint venture that we're working with the Ellis Water Authority and the City of Alice come up with a game plan for our future use, not 2 or 3 years from now, but potentially 40, 50 years from now as well. We control our destiny. It gives an opportunity to get fresher, cleaner water, but it also gives us an opportunity to watch our costs. And it seems like it's a payback within a certain period of time in the event that we anticipate revenue bonds to finance some of those. Am I correct?
That is correct. Your payback is to 0 years because you're spending more doing it, not doing it. And that's kind of a good place to be.
Now, when we talk about where we're at, and thank God that we've had enough rain and we'd like more rain to fill up that lake. But if we got into an emergency situation and it got really dire, the City of Alice decided in the Alice Water Authority that this is the route we're gonna go. Can you give me a timetable from the time we approve financing, get everything set up to where it starts to end? Because, you know, at some point, time could be a problem, right? And I'm not saying that it is, but God forbid that it is. Do you have a timetable of, from what it would take to do this process?
Most of our long lead time items, one is financing, is usually, I'm waiting on the financing before I move forward, or at least thought of financing. And then the other is permitting. Permitting is probably 6 months. But if you decided to go today and you did parallel tracks with your financial side of it, and we made the application for the permit and did some preliminary design and got, you could probably be treating water in 18 months. That's a fast track. That's kind of paralleling some tracks, but you know, probably more of an estimate is if you say, let's go forward, give yourself a couple of years, but you could probably fast track it into about 18 months.
And when you look at the timeliness of it and how long it takes, there was some mention, something in the presentation about the power supply that goes to that. I know that the facility in Brownsville, is that correct? Have some additional power, because it does create or develop some power. And I think they sell it back to a grid. Can you explain that to us a little bit, how that?
Well, in Brownsville, they're not developing, they're actually building a power plant across the, there's a creek bed that there's a power plant. So they're actually furnishing them with water.
Okay.
But they don't generate power. In El Paso, where we're working to take the concentrate and developing a new process, we're taking that and extracting all the, what we call byproducts. Their byproducts is drinking water. So we return all the water back to the city, and they generate their own power. That may be, because we've talked about a lot of different things.
We visited, yeah.
And so that may be where that came from. But PUB actually buys buys power off the grid. They furnish their own power. They have their own power company. They have ownership in some other power, all the different, say, diversify in water, but they also diversify in power, coal and everything. So maybe what you're thinking of is they buy power off the grid during off-peak, and they actually have somebody, 2 or 3 people full-time just buying
Totally separate issue,
electricity. But it's an important situation. And then if and when you look at doing this, we might even look at doing off-peak and doing some things to lower power costs for not only just this plant, but your existing surface water plant as well.
Okay, now, when we discuss things that have an effect on economic development, if we look at California, what's transpired there and how they're going to the drought, there's companies that are moving out of California, going to places that need water supply. And if those companies if they don't have the water supply to meet their demand for establishing whatever products they're doing, they'll leave California. They'll come. How can it affect us economically? Having the abundance of water and with that aquifer, how could that help us out economically, where I get a company from California that wants to move in here and says, you got enough water supply to run my factory or whatever company they have. How that could help us, couldn't it?
Well, first of all, you still have the capacity in the water plant.
Okay.
You can still supply, you're not reducing the capacity of the water plant, this existing plant. So you've got, I'm thinking it's 10 million gallons a day, you're putting in 3. You can, if you have a potential water user, you can actually drill another well. Since this is modular, and if they want a high quality water, obviously the brackish treated is a higher quality water than what you're going to be treating conventionally through Lake Corpus Christi in your surface water plant. You know, that's going to be very attractive to companies. And we did the same thing through the loom in Harlingen. They moved all their bleach and dyeing operations down there because the high quality water, we were using wastewater, but we were going through RO, reverse osmosis, and using wastewater, not for drinking, but for all their bleach and dye operations around the country. So water is a necessity in a lot of manufacturing. And you see that in Corpus too. They're wanting to develop that as well. So yes.
Mr. Norris, the potential of this being successful is pretty high, right? Because they're already doing it. There's over 200 plants in Florida and several here in South Texas and the Donna and the Brownsville area. And if we're successful, say that providing water for the city of Alice without being drought proofing or whatever, is there a potential of possibly selling to other communities?
Well, one of the things we looked at is actually purchasing water from South Texas as well. You know, South Texas, I approached the subject, would you be interested in purchasing water from the city of Alice? Now that gives them a full alternative as to, now they have one supply coming from Corpus Christi. They could, you know, there's probably a availability of possibility of grants that you could do an interconnect. And if you needed water, they could serve and vice versa. So now you not only have two sources of water, but now you
might have 3.
You might, yeah. And so the whole coastal Bend area, at least within this region that's chosen to do this, you've got options.
Well, and you look at San Diego, Fremont, and the cities around us, we actually could become a regional hub and help them out as well.
And I think that's something that you should look at, you know, at some point. Now, it does take pipeline costs to get there.
Yeah, absolutely.
But, you know, they're going to be, the smaller cities don't have the wherewithal, the ability to develop a project like this. And so they're taking from the upper aquifer. So if everybody starts taking from that may affect their supply. Of course, those that take water from Corpus Christi, I'm not saying they're going to run out, but it's, you know, 30% is pretty low.
Yes, I just want, well, it's a comment out to the citizens that the purpose of having you here and for this presentation is to seek out other options. But I know that there's probably concern out there thinking our water is really bad, there's something really horrible going on, that's why, you know, they're taking these measures. What can we do to reassure, because we did have a problem that you're well aware of a few months ago with the odor and so forth. You know, I want to bring that to light to let them know that it was not to the point to where it was dangerous. And can you also educate us and let us know that we weren't the only community? I know that Austin had this problem as well because of the turnover and so forth. I just, you know, just your common citizen will see that we're doing this and they'll think, oh, well, it's because the water's dangerous and it's not good to drink and so forth. I just want, you know, to reiterate that we're just seeking out additional sources and it's not due to the fact that we are now providing bad water. Can you elaborate and help me out with that?
Absolutely. The next 3 hours of my presentation are related to that.
Okay, good.
Also on that, when we contracted with Mr. Norris, how long ago was that?
3 weeks, 3 months.
Yeah.
For the water issue?
Yeah. No, I'm talking about, for the brackish water.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. I mean,
In 2009, yeah, it's been something that's been seeked out,
this has
but,
been
you
in
know,
the
I
works
just,
as
yeah,
far
it's
as,
been in the works for many years, but to those that are
Yeah.
viewing and so forth, I just like to,
Yeah. So what I say to that is, we were hired without water quality issues in mind. That was not even on the radar when we discussed doing this. And so y'all asked us to come in and look at the water treatment, the water quality issues. So, you know, I've got some observations that I'd like to at least, and this will give you an idea as to it's pretty complicated from the standpoint of surface water treatment and then dealing with external issues that you don't, the turnover may be in Lake Alice, at Lake Finley, you know, your varied water quality happens with surface water. I mean, that's just the way it is. And then you have temperature variation. I mean, we were at 32 degrees and then we were at 90 degrees. And so that water does funny things when it turns over. It's a phenomenon that just happens. And so
I
we
like
made
that
some
word, a
recommendations.
phenomenon.
Yeah, we made some recommendations. I mean, the water's good. I mean, algae causes odor, and especially when you kill the algae and it goes through the process, you can't see it, but there's a residual effect on that. And so we got to come in and play Monday morning quarterback, and I think that your operators have done, it's something that just, this jumps out, and so it's a combination, I would say, of communications amongst your chemical supplier, your water treatment plant, and your distribution system, and really taking an understanding. So there's not one thing that we can say this is it, but there's a multitude of things that we recommend that actually it could cause this to happen. And I was going to go through a few and try to make this as least technical as I can and understandable. And so what I did is I have about 3 slides. And so I have a current action and their effect on what you're doing now. And here's a solution that we recommend. And it may be a 6-month solution, or maybe some capital improvements that you might need to make or not make if you do an alternative. So it just kind of gives you an idea. This is going to be a work in progress in helping the operator. Demetrio was like, yeah, he just got this data left and right and different things. So
Would it be fair to say that we were very diligent in what we were doing for the city?
absolutely.
Okay, thank you.
And so this is really us coming in as engineers, because there's engineers and operators, and sometimes engineers can say something and that it may not work, because we may not have the reality of, well, I can't put it in here because the pipe closed or something. So it's like this, we work together to get it done. And so that's the solution we're coming up with is, and so, okay, here's what we think has happened, and we can go through there and see, and be sure to stop me if I've said
No.
anytime during this. So one thing we talk about is chemical addition. So I know that you've had this problem in the past. I think there was an article that you showed like 9 years ago, and it was like identical. You had the burn of the algae, and it was almost an identical situation. And so we take a look at chemical addition. So alum is what you use to coagulate. You put that in the water, and it coagulates, settles out in the clarifier, and then you go through sand filtration. The water comes down through the sand, and you get a drinking water quality. Well, if you put too much alum, then it changes the chemical characteristics of the water. You can't see it, so the pH goes down, which means it's a little more acidic than alkaline. Okay, so what does that mean? It means it gives you poor settling quality. So sometimes if you think you put more chemicals in, it'll help. It has the reversed effect. And I kind of blame a lot of that on our, maybe not blame, but a chemical supplier should be here helping the operators and figuring out what is the best dosage and chemical to use to do this. And so we recommend switching to an alum with polymer addition. So it uses less alum, doesn't change the characteristics. And so that's where your chemical supplier comes in and says, here's their magic formula, and they test it on the bench in the lab to see how it works, and then they go through that. So they should be here helping. That's one of the things that I recommend. So regular jar testing, and that's what they call it with the chemical supplier. And so that gives you the proper selection and dosage of chemicals as conditions change. Now, if you had the same conditions all around, probably you wouldn't be in this position. But you had a major change in condition that you bought chemicals for 3 months ago, doesn't fit what you're doing now, not properly.
Because it varies, there's so many factors that play into it.
Yeah.
Right?
Now, if the reservoirs might have been up, at 50%, you might not even occurred. But the reservoirs are lower. It's not something that, oh, we're going to expect this year. Next year may not even happen. I don't even know if it happened last
It
year.
happened last year.
So now we use chlorine to burn, to kill the algae. Well, that causes taste and odor problems. All right,
But it is still safe.
it is safe, yeah.
Yes.
And so you currently use chlorine dioxide. So that's a better agent to get rid of, not have the taste and odor problems. And then also, you could also feed activated carbon. What carbon does is absorb the organic material and settles out. So that, you don't have that currently, so that might be something you take a look at. But that's, your part of your supplier, he needs to do you pay them quite a bit of money, and I don't know if they've ever come out to the plant.
I was up, yeah, they did.
They did initially.
Yeah,
They did.
but it's changed, so it should be, you should always be in
It's a
contact with
constant,
them.
they have to be out there pretty often. And I've been out there a couple of times with the Metro, and I've seen the chemical guy out there.
Yeah.
working that
And
problem.
so, and we're not necessarily privy, I mean, we may be saying something that may already occur, but to me, it's not enough, at least when you're going through this. And so, one of the things that you have unequal flow distribution, you have like 3 units, and so not all are equal. And so, and it's not, can't just automatically adjust valves, it's all manual. So what we recommend is taking a look and make it equal as best you can. That's, if you lower the flow, if you do the desal project, then you're going to have minimal flow through the clarifiers and filters and things, so you're going to have a lot of time, that water's going to come out there pretty pristine, and you can take things out of service and maintain them. Now they're all full, and some of the things we recommend, clean it out when you can. So the filters, same thing, unequal flow rates, manual as best as you can. So now you've got old sludge built up in the flocculators and the clarifiers, and you've got to empty the basins during a non-demand period. And so we say empty and clean when possible. So you have square clarifiers and you got a circular collector. Nothing to catch the things that are in the corner. And so those things collect over the years. And while that may not be a big issue, it may contribute, one thing contributes to another and adds to another. And so one of the things, turbidity is your measure of your water quality. Everything that the water plant's measuring out of the plant meets the drinking water standards. But the lab comes up with different results. All right, so, but the manual lab here locally and the meter at the plant show everything's good. But the lab, I recommend changing labs, so we're redoing that. So we're basically saying, continue to check until they match. Just make sure that you've got apples and apples comparison in there. So that's really a key element that we don't necessarily know the answer to. This one, LSI get a little bit engineering on this. This is called a Langelier saturation index. Most water plant operators don't know. That's not in their normal vocabulary. It's in our vocabulary because we do brackish desal. So what that is, if it's a negative number, means your water is a little corrosive. Means that if it gets into a metal pipe, it may pull iron. So the water coming out of the plant may look good, but the water out of the tap may not because it's negative. And so what it's doing is stabilizing itself by pulling the iron out, and you get red water at the end, but clear water at the start.
And that might fluctuate, being that you have a house that's 40 years old and has a different type of line, that whether it be PVC or whatever. So if that breaks it, that means that water could be rusty or...
Yeah, I mean, you could have, a lot of people have copper pipe things, and you may have some, I'm not sure about your distribution, you probably have some metal pipes, but so what we're recommending is making sure that we keep that, we're increasing the pH to a higher level. And so we recommend doing that. That's something that we can do. So, and then if you've got problems in that area, you flush those areas out.
Which they do now.
Which they do.
Yes.
But this is where communication comes in. So you need your water treatment personnel speaking to your distribution personnel. And right now, what I've gathered is, hey, we got red water or we got this, but no one's really necessarily documented where that is, so you can actually take care of that. So
I know that the Metro has gone out to several sites that have had some issues, the Metro, with rusty water. And some of those at the end of the loop where our fire hydrants are, so we have to flush those out, is that correct?
That is correct. Once a month, by TCQ rules and regs, we got to flush all dead-end mains.
Right.
We do flush extra hydrants if there's a hydrant nearby where a customer is complaining about or concerned about rusty water or taste and odor.
So when calls come in with that, you address it through the home needs, you do the flush, and you come back and clears it out, and that solves some of the problem.
Correct. Get back with the customer if an address is provided.
Would it be safe to say, because I know there's some that, their water's coming out, I guess like muddy or what have you, but I find it real odd that the neighbor on this side isn't and the neighbor in this side isn't, so it's safe to say that it could very well be their actual pipes, is that correct?
That is correct, but you are required to put in water that doesn't affect that,
Okay.
okay? Because I can give you clean water all day long at the plant, and there's a lead and copper rule. EPA has a lead and copper rule. That's why they have the Langmuir saturation. So if you're negative, you may extract lead and copper. It may meet standards at the plant, but if it's a corrosive type water, it may pull that out. So if anybody's ever experienced, you know, copper pipe having pinholes inside their house, that means that you're probably, either it's cheap copper or a combination of cheap copper, or your index is too low. And I had that in Harlingen. I had to replace all the piping, and I think it was probably that, even though it was in that time frame, it was cheaper copper pipe being used too. So you're right. It could be that this house and this house uses plastic pipe coming up to the house, and the other have maybe galvanized or copper or some metallic.
Well, I just recently, my daughter just recently had that problem with her water, and then come to find out it was the pipes underneath, there was a slight crack under the house, and that's what was causing that, so that's why, you know, we have to, you know, before going and saying, oh, the city's providing, look at this, the city's providing dirty water, we have to look at all, you know, the full story.
Find the cause.
Find the cause, exactly, and it took a long time to discover, and then, you know, we've had to replace everything underneath that home.
Well, and sometimes when you change something in your treatment scheme, it could cause a reaction. Say if it's really a reaction to maybe what's already in the pipe. So in that particular case, if you have a crack in the pipe, you could have a contaminant that comes in there, and it's
Right.
got some, I don't want to talk about too gross things, but it should have algae or something in there.
Right,
And then
that
you change
reacted.
the process, that releases it from the pipe.
Right.
And so, like I say, there's not one solution here, but there's things that we can do to minimize.
Right, and we have to look
May or may not
at the
eliminate
whole
it, but it may
problem.
minimize.
Right.
It's never gonna be a perfect system, any way you look at it.
Yeah, we just have water that's going to be inconsistent. So,
It could also be the supply lines from the city, old metal pipes to PVC pipes or galvanized pipes, so it's a combination of things.
Everything.
But if we deliver a better water, like you're saying, with a little higher pH,
And-
hopefully.
And I know Council, Mr. Sparsa and Ms. Johnson was here prior to us coming on. Y'all spent some money in reversing sewer and water lines. Am I correct?
All the way from
Like-
South Texas Boulevard, all the way to,
But in some.
Major
brick-
and then,
lines.
yes, the major trunk lines have been replaced.
So, and if I'm not mistaken, I don't know the number off the top of my head, y'all might know that. I understand the 9 million range, is that correct? So there's been a lot of lines that have been replaced in the city of Alice in conjunction with the Texas Boulevard project as well. So there's been a lot of money spent in order to get some of those lines. Do we have more? Absolutely. But we just gotta keep replacing those as
yeah,
well.
that's.
Like you said, it's a work in progress.
Yeah.
It will be a work in progress forever, because things change and things get older, just like your 50-year pipeline has big holes in it, gets big holes in it.
Along the pipeline, there was some work done at that pipeline, Demetrio, on the one going to on the transmission line.
That's correct, that was,
Could you share that with us a little bit? I know there was an issue in between Alice and Orange Grove with that.
that's correct. We had a leak on our 20-inch transmission line. The leak was actually located about 200 yards north of Farm Road 534.
Okay.
That is the second leak that we've experienced there, probably within the last 6 months or so.
Okay.
Weather conditions really played a factor as far as us safely getting there to do the job, and it was completed yesterday.
Very good. Because it was safe to get in there at that time.
Correct. During that period, we actually pumped again, and we were just flowing through the 30. And there was no new water being flow, or any water that was purchased from the city of Corpus flowing through there because their meters were showing zero flow.
Okay. Very good. Thank you. I knew that you had worked on it, and I just wanted to bring that up. I'm sorry.
Oh, actually,
Thank you, Metro.
well, and we talk about reports, we just talked about the reports of red or dirty water. You know, identify where the problem is, document it, and communicate between everybody to kind of figure out and it may be just an isolated incident.
Right.
Instead of the sky's falling, it's not the city. It may be just one. And when you change things in your process, those things might happen. So I think that's pretty much.
Do you agree? You have some solutions there that, are we doing these already? As far as hiring the pH in the water, those kind of things?
We're not, well, this was just basically produced yesterday, and I know that Jesus is my partner, Leal, has been in constant contact with Demetrio in developing these. And so I don't think anything's necessarily been implemented. I know that.
That is correct.
We've been discussing that, agree to disagree, we've got this, now we're like working like this. And now, Demetrio, I don't know if you have any.
Well, one of the things that we need to keep in mind is we ran 2 sets of sample runs, and both were done during our chlorine burn, which was from March the 3rd to the 31st. Now that we're back to our normal disinfection of chloramines, I don't know what kind of a factor that's going to play, since we're introducing now LAS to the water, we're introducing chlorine dioxide to the water, if we need to run another set.
We probably needs to be kind of get you to an equilibrium, and so. That's
And like
probably-
Mr. Norris mentioned, there were some parameters that were in question from the lab that we had used last month for this study. I took some samples to the Owen Stevens plant today, and they matched up pretty similar to what we were running at the plant. But I haven't had a chance to run those through Mr. Leal yet.
Okay.
I'm real curious as to what the Austin Lake, what they've done about.
They probably do some of the same things. I know that a lot of times, you can't hardly, on a big lake, you can't put they put copper sulfate in the lake, but you don't have control over Lake Corpus Christi. And their lakes are so big, so they probably address it, probably in similar fashion, but you still.
It's
We have
kind of
algae
odd that we
here.
had the exact same problem. I mean, little old Alice, but yet Austin was experiencing the exact same problem.
Yeah,
I heard they were utilizing carbon also.
yeah, carbon is expensive, but it takes the organic, which is your odor is organic decayed, but it's clear, it's clean, you can't see it.
Right.
But the carbon will absorb and precipitate that out. So,
And getting back to the taste and odor smell, Councilwoman, I've gone to some places where it's completely cleared out and it's fine. I've gone to some places where no, it's not. So there's going to be those fluctuations.
Mhm.
The important part here, though, is that they call us or your department and let us know where those at so that we can target those areas and isolate them and do what we need to. So it's important that we know where they're at so that we can address them.
and
So-
keep track of those on an annual basis. In other words, you might have a map that has dots around the city, and next year says, okay, this is a trouble area, maybe the pipeline needs to be replaced. But, it may be a 10-year capital improvements program to replace certain pipelines around the city that may, because you don't really know, 50-year pipeline may be deteriorated, you just really don't know
Right.
till you dig it up, or you have big breaks.
Right, because our distribution system needs to be looked at as well, and I know that you said, Demetrio, that we are keeping track of when somebody has a water problem, they call us, and you guys know where it is, correct?
Correct. The water plant will take care of taste and odor issues, rusty waters. Maintenance construction will take care of any leaks, any new construction, things of that nature.
Is there any different kind of chemicals that we've already implemented or changed?
No, we haven't. We just went from the normal disinfection to the chlorine, straight chlorine, and now back to the normal disinfection.
So we'll probably suggest that maybe we sit down with the chemical supplier and kind of go through that.
ASAP.
Something else to think about, we're talking about treatment of this brackish water, and if we're moving into that sense, and let's use what percent would be brackish water and what percent would be surface water once we implement,
You're talking probably on average 85% brackish.
so now, if we have an issue with our surface water, you're talking about a 15% going into this 85%. So if we were doing this already and the algae bloom would have occurred, it would have been a 15% of problem.
Probably would have
which
been
probably
diluted.
not-
Probably even less than that
Yeah.
because you're slowing down the treatment process and treating it longer through the plant. So I'm thinking that, you know, we put these kind of fail-safes in, you know, even if you have a little bit of odor, you know, that the blend is gonna be, and maybe even, because you're using less water, you can afford to get some activated carbon and add that and zap that taste and odor.
Or you could stop using that water.
Yeah, well, you'll need it for peak. See, this is a baseline plant, so, you know, unless you oversize the brackish plant a little bit to take care of
To
that.
keep up.
Right now, we don't include it.
Council, any other questions? I know we've gone on quite a bit, but it's.
Thank you
apologize- I
so
apologize.
much.
No, but it's an
No.
important issue, and we think the public needs to be aware of what we're actually doing, how we're working with us. So Demetri, I think you've done a fantastic job, and we're working, it's a work in progress, like you said. So it's important that we share these things so that people know exactly what we're doing and that we're on top of it. So I think it was good that you came, sir, and I extended some additional time because I thought it was that important.
So I appreciate that.
Council, any other questions?
No.
Thank you.
Have a safe drive back, sir. Appreciate it.
I'm staying.
Oh, good. I was-
Good.
I wouldn't miss the rest of the meeting.